Have you ever been in a room where time seemed to stop? Not because of chaos or noise, but because someone walked in so quietly, so effortlessly, that the entire energy shifted. They didn't speak, they didn't try, and yet everyone noticed them. That's not charisma. It's not style. It's not wealth. That's presence. And it's more rare than beauty, louder than words, and stronger than power. You know what's wild? Most people today spend their entire lives screaming into the void, posting, performing, proving, trying to be seen, heard, validated. But the ones we remember, they're the ones who move in silence. They carry something within that can't be faked. They're not looking for attention because they don't need it, because they've built something stronger than noise. Stillness. Stillness isn't laziness. It isn't hiding. It's the most misunderstood kind of power. Stillness is what remains when you've stopped chasing. It's what happens when you stop trying to impress people and start aligning with your truest self. And in that alignment, you don't need to be magnetic. You'll become magnetic. It's the energy of someone who knows who they are, who walks into a room and doesn't try to dominate it, because they already own their space inside. They don't need permission. They don't seek applause. And that quiet confidence is what pulls people in, like gravity. This is not just a personality trait. It's a learnable state. A way of being that's grounded in ancient Stoic wisdom and proven by the emotional hunger we see in our world today for peace, presence, and people who feel real. Let me take you to Rome. Not the tourist traps or the echoing crowds, but a side street sunlight spilling through cobblestones. A quiet cafe tucked into the ancient wall. There's a man sitting there, Ethan. He's not scrolling. He's not on a call. He's not trying to be interesting. He's sipping espresso. One hand on a small journal, the other resting calmly on the table. People glance. People pause. Something about him feels ... anchored. He doesn't look rich. He doesn't look famous. He looks undisturbed, and in that undisturbed energy, there is power. Ethan is the embodiment of a force most people never cultivate: authentic independence, silent elegance, emotional clarity. He's not pretending to be someone. He's returning to himself, and people feel it without even knowing why. This series is about that force, about cultivating silent attractiveness and magnetism that doesn't shout, doesn't flash, but leaves a mark deeper than attention ever could. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to peel away everything you're not. And I promise you this, by the end of this journey, you'll see the difference between being impressive and being unforgettable. But before we dive in, I want to ask you for one thing. If this already hits something inside you, if it awakens that part of you that's tired of chasing, performing, and being someone you're not, then please, take a second to subscribe to this channel, because we're building something rare here. Not just another self-help series, but a quiet revolution, and your support helps us keep going. Now, let's begin with the first shift, the foundation of silent attractiveness. Authentic independence. The kind of independence that doesn't need noise to be noticed. The kind that says, I know who I am. I'm not waiting for you to tell me. Because that kind of energy, it doesn't fade. It lingers, it leads, and it leaves a mark long after you've walked away. Quick challenge for you. Let's see where you stand right now. Which energy do you think draws more people in the long run? A. The person who always needs to be the center of attention. B. The person who moves in silence, but leaves everyone wondering who they are. Drop your answer in the comments, A or B, and tell me why. I read every single response. Let's keep this conversation alive. Some things are unforgettable, not because they scream for your attention, but because they linger. Like a soft song you can't stop humming, like the feeling of a touch long after it's gone. Subtlety has power, but it's a power we've forgotten how to respect. In today's world, everything is about more color, more volume, more visibility. But what if true influence, the kind that doesn't fade, comes from what's not said? not shown, not shared. The most powerful impressions are rarely loud. They're layered, nuanced, and they reveal themselves slowly, intentionally. That's what silent attractiveness is built on. Not the grand, but the grounded. Take Alina, for instance. She's not the one who enters a room with glitter or noise. She's the one who doesn't need to. In Kyoto, walking beneath the warm lantern glow, she didn't wear a statement piece or carry herself like a spectacle. Yet people turned to look, not because she asked for attention, but because she radiated something few do. Grace without effort. That's the first subtle thread of magnetism, how you move through the world. Your posture, your pace, the way you handle your body, as if it belongs to someone you deeply respect. Because it does. Silent elegance is about intention. It's in how you walk into a room without apologizing, how you choose your words with care, and even more so, your silences. How you don't fill every gap with noise because you've grown comfortable in your own quiet. And then there's another layer, the one people often overlook: scent. We rarely think about it, but scent is memory. Scent is emotion. Scent can stop a person mid-thought. Not because it's overwhelming, but because it's quietly captivating. Ethan knew this. He wore a cologne that didn't declare itself, but revealed itself. Just a hint of wood, clean linen, a trace of something green. It wasn't about being noticed, it was about leaving something behind, long after he'd left the room. But it's not just about fragrance, it's about presence in every sense. The subtle signs that you care about the little things. Clean lines, hydrated skin, clothes that fit well, not expensively, but intentionally. When your outer world reflects your inner discipline, people trust you more. They feel your stability before they hear your voice. Yet even all of this, the movement, the presence, the scent, is only part of what makes subtlety powerful. The real depth comes in your attention. When you give someone your full presence, you give them a rare gift, the feeling that they matter. You listen not to reply, but to understand. You watch not to judge, but to witness. You don't scroll, you don't glance at your phone. You stay, and in that staying, in that stillness, you build something more magnetic than any outfit or speech could ever create. Connection. This kind of attentiveness doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be real. And there's one more layer, the one few ever master. Mystery. Mystery isn't about hiding. It's about protecting what's sacred. It's knowing that you don't owe the world all of you, all at once. It's allowing people to discover you, piece by piece, slowly, earnestly, through time, not through scrolling. Alina practiced this kind of self-respect. She had stories she didn't tell on first dates, dreams she didn't post, pain she processed privately, not performatively. And that restraint didn't distance people, it drew them in. Because mystery invites curiosity. It creates space for wonder. And wonder is the foundation of fascination. In a culture of oversharing, being selective is seductive. You become a presence people feel, not just see. You become the person others wonder about when they're alone. The person they think about long after the conversation is over. Not because you said the most, but because you revealed the least, with purpose. Subtle power is not about being invisible. It's about being undeniable in your own way. So as you move through your days, ask yourself, what does my stillness say? What do I leave behind without saying a word? In a world trained to chase attention, learn to master the art of subtlety, because it's not the loudest presence that stays with us. It's the quietest one, the one that made us feel something deeper than words. And that's the kind of presence that never fades. Depth is a rare currency in a world addicted to surfaces. We've been conditioned to scroll, skim, and swipe through life, to chase novelty over nuance. But true attraction, the kind that reaches into someone's soul and stays there, is never surface level. It's built through layers, through curiosity, through a willingness to know and be known without the noise. Maya understood this long before she had the words for it. On a cold golden evening in Istanbul, she sat on a weathered bench beside an elderly poet who didn't speak English fluently, and yet they spoke for hours, not in perfect grammar, but in gestures, shared tea, and deep pauses. She had asked him only one question: "What do you think life is for?" His answer, delivered slowly, with tear-lined eyes, didn't just change her, it awakened her, because depth is not about being impressive. It's about being open. Open to learning. Open to others. Open to life in its most human, imperfect, and beautiful form. This is where cultural wisdom begins. It's not measured by stamps in a passport, or by how many languages you speak. It's felt in your humility, your interest in people whose lives look nothing like yours, and your ability to listen without needing to correct or compete. When you cultivate cultural wisdom, you become someone others instinctively trust, because you're not just aware of the world, you're in relationship with it. You don't look at someone with different values and try to convert them. You lean in. You ask why. You seek to understand before being understood. People feel safe around that kind of depth. They open up, and through that openness, true connection is born. But cultural wisdom isn't the only kind of depth the world is starving for. There's also the depth that comes from compassion, and not the kind you post about, but the kind that meets people in the raw places of their lives. Jordan didn't think twice the night he saw a woman struggling to change a tire in the pouring rain. He just pulled over, rolled up his sleeves, and helped. No performance, no recording, no self-congratulation, just presence, just care. And that small, quiet moment became something far more meaningful than any social highlight reel. Because real compassion isn't performative, it's patient. It shows up when no one is watching. It doesn't try to fix it, just stays. The truth is, we all carry something: grief, fear, longing. And when you're the kind of person who allows others to feel seen without shame, your presence becomes a refuge. Not everyone will say thank you. Not everyone will acknowledge what you gave, but they'll remember. Sometimes for the rest of their lives. Compassion isn't weakness. It's a deep well of strength. It means you've done the hard work of holding space for your own pain, so now you can hold it for others. This kind of emotional generosity doesn't just make you attractive, it makes you unforgettable. But there's one more layer to cultivating: depth. You have to slow down. Slowness is not laziness, it's intention. You can't experience the depth of a book if you rush to the ending. You can't understand a person if you're constantly calculating your next reply. You can't connect to the richness of your own life if you're racing from task to task, like you're trying to outrun yourself. Depth requires time, stillness, inquiry. It requires discomfort, because to be deep is to be willing to not have all the answers, to stay curious even when you're afraid, to ask questions that have no easy resolution. Try this. Choose one day a week where you don't try to get ahead. Choose instead to get within. Watch a film from a country you've never been to. Ask your grandparents how they fell in love. Sit with your own fears and write them out. Not to conquer them, but to finally hear them. That's where richness lives. Not in certainty, in exploration. When you cultivate depth in a noisy world, you become someone people are drawn to, not because you flash, but because you reflect something deeper in them, something they may have forgotten, something they crave. You don't need to be brilliant, or exotic, or endlessly interesting. You just need to care enough to wonder, because when you live from that place of wonder, you become one of the rare ones. A person who brings meaning into moments, who sees people as stories, not obstacles, who listens like it matters. And in today's world, there's nothing more quietly powerful than that. We often believe that what makes someone magnetic is how serious they are, how stoic, how controlled, how composed. But if there's one secret that silently draws people in, even more than mystery or elegance, it's this: the energy of lightness. A person who can hold the weight of life, yet still laugh. who can walk through the fire and smile with sincerity, not sarcasm. That energy is rare, and it's unforgettable. Joy isn't a performance, it's resilience. And in a world that feels perpetually burdened by anxiety, deadlines, and digital overload, the person who can laugh without trying to impress is the person who gives others permission to breathe again. Alina knew this, but not in theory. She lived it during a high-pressure fundraising dinner in Chicago, where executives were stiff and conversations even stiffer. She didn't tell jokes. She didn't seek to dominate the room, but when the tension was at its peak, and someone made a comment about how robotic the event felt, she simply smiled and replied, "Well, if we're robots, can I at least be the one that runs on coffee?" And sarcasm. That one line didn't just break the tension, it shifted the atmosphere. Laughter followed. Shoulders relaxed. People began to actually talk, not perform. Because joy isn't frivolous, it's transformative. It's what makes hard things bearable. And it's often what draws people closer than confidence ever could. But real joy doesn't come from pretending everything's fine. It comes from facing what's not fine and still choosing to soften, to lift, to carry light. It's easy to be cynical, easy to retreat behind cold irony. What's hard, what's rare's to hold on to your warmth in a world that often gives you reasons not to. That's why cultivating joy is not about laughing at everything. It's about finding what's still worth laughing for. Start by noticing the small things that spark a smile. A song that pulls you back to a memory. A stranger's dog sticking its head out the car window. That awkward moment that could either ruin your day or become your favorite story to tell. Write them down, not because they're groundbreaking, but because they're grounding. They remind you that life isn't just made of goals and grit, it's also made of grace. Laughter has always been medicine, but it's also magnetism. Think about the people who draw others in. It's not just their confidence, it's their ease, their willingness to let things be human, messy, and sometimes funny. Ethan had that energy too. Though often quiet, he had a way of diffusing intensity, not by changing the subject, but by softening its edge. He once described heartbreak as the emotional equivalent of trying to carry a glass of water across a football field in a hurricane. And the way he said it made you laugh and also feel understood. That's the magic of humor with heart. It doesn't belittle pain. It lets it breathe. And then there's the practice of energy itself, how we show up physically, emotionally, spiritually. True lightness doesn't mean being hyperactive or bubbly. It means you're not weighed down by the need to control every moment. You're spacious, present. You can hold silence without panic and speak with warmth that isn't forced. One of the most beautiful forms of self-respect is choosing to protect your energy, not just through boundaries, but through habits that replenish you. Get into nature. Dance when no one's watching. Let music move through you. Make time for play, even if you think you've outgrown it. Joy, like any strength, must be trained. And that means allowing yourself to be lifted not because life is easy, but because you've learned to rise with it. There's a particular kind of presence that emerges from someone who knows how to carry both depth and delight, who can cry without shame and laugh without guilt, who takes life seriously, but not themselves. That balance is rare, but it's what makes someone feel safe and alive at the same time. Energy and lightness don't make you less attractive, they make you unforgettable. Because the world doesn't just want more beauty or success, it wants more soul, more sincerity, more people who remind us that even here, even now, there is something to smile about. So if you want to cultivate silent magnetism, don't just master mystery or independence. Learn how to find the light in dark rooms. Learn how to hold others without fixing them. Learn how to laugh, not at the world, but with it. That kind of presence isn't loud, but it lingers. And sometimes, it saves people in ways they'll never be able to explain. There's a presence some people carry that shifts a room not by force, not by volume, but by emotional weight. The kind of presence that doesn't panic when energy shifts, that doesn't get pulled into drama, that stays centered, calm, clear. It's a rare strength, and it comes from one place: emotional mastery. Emotional mastery is not about being detached or numb. It's about being rooted. It's knowing how to feel without being flooded, how to respond without overreacting, how to care without losing yourself in someone else's chaos. It's the power of still water that runs deep. Ethan knew this well. During a leadership retreat in the quiet hills outside Santa Fe, tensions flared in his group. Two colleagues snapped at each other in a heated exchange, and everyone felt the room begin to splinter. But Ethan didn't interrupt. He didn't try to silence them. He simply waited. And then he asked one question calmly, evenly. What's actually important here to both of you? That moment didn't just diffuse the situation. It revealed the power of presence that understands emotion, rather than being ruled by it. That's what emotional intelligence looks like. And it's not something you're born with, something you build. It begins with self-awareness. Before you can read others, you have to read yourself. You have to know the tones in your own emotional language, the subtle shift between frustration and fatigue, between sadness and shame. You have to learn to sit with feelings you want to avoid and ask them what they're trying to teach you. Try naming your emotions out loud when you're alone, not in judgment, but in honesty. This is grief. This is disappointment. This is excitement with nowhere to land. And then ask, what do I need right now to stay grounded? Self creates space between impulse and response. That space is where power lives. But emotional mastery doesn't stop there. It extends to how you navigate others. We often think people are hard to understand, but they're not. They're just rarely listened to with real attention. People don't need you to fix them. They need you to see them, to read the small cues, their breathing, their eyes, the tension in their jaw. They need you to hear not just their words, but the tremble behind them. Social awareness is not manipulation. It's entering a room and sensing its emotional temperature before adding your own fire. It's adjusting your tone without losing your truth. It's knowing when to speak, when to pause, and when silence will do more than a paragraph. Alina practiced this in her own way. She had a way of making people feel instantly safe, not by being agreeable, but by being grounded. People said things to her they hadn't said out loud in years, because she wasn't trying to impress. She was trying to understand, and understanding is magnetic. There's something quietly irresistible about a person who doesn't react to every jab, who doesn't spiral at every inconvenience, who can sit in discomfort without exploding or escaping. That's emotional maturity. And it's not just attractive, it's transformative. The Stoics understood this better than most. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Emotional mastery is the practice of returning to that power again and again, no matter what life throws at you. But let's be honest, this work is not easy. It asks you to be more curious than defensive, more observant than reactive. It requires you to notice your patterns, your projections, your triggers, and choose differently. It means apologizing when you're wrong, even if no one asked. It means stepping away before saying something you'll regret. It means offering grace to people who haven't yet learned what you have, without condescending to them. And more than anything, it means being emotionally consistent. The world doesn't need more passion that burns hot and dies fast. It needs people who can be steady, who can be relied on, not just in calm, but in chaos. Practice being that person. Let your presence be a balm, not a blade. Let your energy invite honesty, not fear. Let your tone soften where others harden. Let your silence hold truth instead of avoidance. Because in the end, emotional mastery is not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally in command. And when you are, people feel it. They trust it. They lean into it. You become a lighthouse, not a spotlight dot, and in a stormy world, there's nothing more attractive than someone who knows how to hold their ground without losing their heart. There's a kind of person we all quietly hope to have in our lives, someone who stays, not because it's convenient, not because they need anything, but because they mean what they say and do what they promise. In a world of fleeting connections and constant distractions, that kind of presence feels almost sacred. Reliability might not look glamorous. It doesn't light up a room or command applause, but it builds something much more powerful than admiration. It builds trust. Leo was that kind of person. He wasn't loud. He didn't try to stand out. But when Ava's life cracked open in ways she never saw coming, a broken engagement, a health scare, the kind of quiet breakdowns people usually carry, alone he was the one who showed up. No speech, no spotlight, just a knock on the door, just warmth in the silence. He had always been that way. When he said he'd call, he did. When he committed to something, he followed through even when no one checked. His reliability wasn't showy, it was rooted in who he was. And because of that, Ava never had to doubt if he'd be there. She just knew. That's what consistency creates. A foundation. A feeling of safety in a world that often feels uncertain. We tend to undervalue consistency because it's not flashy. But consistency is what builds legacies. It's what deepens relationships. It's what makes people trust you, not just with plans or projects, but with their hearts. Being reliable doesn't mean being perfect. It means being steady, showing up when it matters, being clear in your boundaries, your words, your presence. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be there when others expect you, and more importantly, when they don't. In a culture that celebrates spontaneity and change, consistency can feel outdated, but it's the very thing that holds us together. The friend who remembers your birthday every year, the mentor who checks in long after the program ends, the partner who doesn't just say "I love you," but shows it in small, repeated acts that prove it's not just emotion, it's intention. This isn't about becoming rigid or robotic. True consistency is alive. It adapts, but it doesn't disappear. It's rooted in purpose, not performance. That's what makes it magnetic. People are drawn to those they can count on, those who don't cancel last minute, who don't make promises in a rush of emotion only to retreat when things get hard. Consistency signals integrity. It says, "I've done the inner work. You can trust me not because I'm perfect, but because I'm aligned." That kind of trust isn't built in big moments. It's built in the small, often invisible ones. It's keeping your word when you're tired. It's honoring your routines when no one's watching. It's showing up for yourself first, because you understand that you can't be a steady force for others if your own life is in disarray. And it's emotional consistency, too. Knowing how to self-regulate, not being a different person based on who's in the room, not turning cold when things get real, but being the kind of presence people feel safe around because you don't swing from storm to sunshine without warning. It's powerful when people say, "I don't have to guess. With you, I know what I'm going to get." That doesn't come from charisma. It comes from character. And character is what silent attractiveness is really made of. Because when the attention fades, when the excitement passes, when the chaos settles, what's left is how you made people feel. Whether they could count on you, whether you lived what you spoke, whether you were still there long after the spotlight moved on. If you want to be magnetic, don't just be impressive. Be reliable. Let your life be a long series of small promises kept. Let your presence be something people know they can lean on when life feels too heavy. Be the person who's still standing, not at the center of the party, but at the edge, waiting for someone to need you. And when they do, don't make a scene. Just stay, because in the end, it's not always the loudest or the most exciting people we remember. It's the ones who stayed, the ones who kept their word, the ones who became the anchor when everything else felt adrift. That's the final piece of silent attractiveness, and maybe the most important one of all. In the end, it was never about being seen. Ethan, Alina, Maya, Jordan, Leo, each of them moved through the world not with the goal of being noticed, but with the desire to live in alignment with something deeper. They didn't chase validation. They cultivated character, and in doing so, they became unforgettable. Ethan taught us what it means to be anchored, to enter a space with stillness so complete, it settles the chaos around it. His independence didn't make him distant, it made him grounded, and that grounding gave others permission to do the same. Alina showed us how elegance can whisper, louder than confidence ever could. She didn't need to be dramatic or polished to draw attention. Her presence was soft, but it left an imprint because it came from authenticity, not performance. She held space for laughter, for ease, for grace in the middle of discomfort, and people felt better simply being around her. Maya's story reminded us of the power of curiosity, the kind that isn't rooted in superiority, but in the hunger to understand. Her willingness to ask questions, to listen without rushing to respond, opened doors most people will never walk through. She wasn't trying to be worldly. She was trying to be present, and through that, she cultivated a depth that transcended culture, age, and language. Jordan reminded us of compassion, the kind you don't broadcast, the kind you give when no one is watching. His strength wasn't in loud declarations, but in silent service. He gave without expectation, and because of that, his impact went deeper than words. And Leo, he was the anchor, the one who showed that consistency can be more attractive than charisma. In a world where so many say things they don't mean, his quiet reliability became a sanctuary. His life didn't demand attention, but it earned deep, lasting respect. Together, they wove a story that's rare in today's culture. A story not about standing out, but about standing strong. About becoming so rooted in who you are, that the world can't help but be drawn to your presence. This story wasn't just about them, it's about us. It's about you, because whether you'll realize it or not, you've already felt the pull of silent attractiveness. You've met someone who said very little, but whose presence stayed with you. You've watched someone walk away from drama, not out of weakness, but out of power. You've encountered someone whose stillness held more force than any argument ever could, and maybe, just maybe, you've already started becoming that person yourself. That's the invitation this story gives you, not to become someone else, but to become more of who you already are without the noise, the performance, the overthinking. To ask yourself, what habits am I building in silence? What energy am I bringing into every space I enter? What parts of me are quietly magnetic? And how can I protect and nurture those? The lesson here is this. Real attraction, the kind that transforms people, the kind that creates legacy, is not loud, it's consistent, it's intentional, it's deeply human, and it's available to all of us. Not through ambition, but through alignment. So here's how you can apply this story to your life. Start small. Choose one habit that resonated with you. Maybe it's cultivating presence, or practicing emotional consistency, or letting mystery do the talking when you'd normally overshare. Don't try to become a different person. Just refine the truest parts of you. The parts you've silenced for too long. The parts that don't scream, but are undeniably strong. Show up for yourself, quietly, daily, and let that silent transformation speak on your behalf. Now, I want to hear from you. Which part of this story hit you the hardest? Which character did you resonate with most? Ethan, Alina, Maya, Jordan, or Leo? And more importantly, what's one habit you're going to work on in your own life, starting today? Comment your answer below. Share your thoughts, your perspective, your wisdom. Let's build a space where people don't just scroll past, but stop, reflect, and connect. And if this story stirred something in you, if it gave you language for something you've always felt but couldn't quite describe, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Your support doesn't just help us grow, it gives us the energy to keep creating powerful, grounded content like this. So hit that subscribe button, drop your comment, and let this be the beginning, not the end, of something extraordinary. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more of you. Come confident and quietly powerful.